Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. Well, after 5 weeks, the first criminal trial of a former U.S. president is nearly over. The defense rested this morning. It called only 2 witnesses. And despite all his bravo and insistences to the contrary, Donald Trump was not one of them. I mean, we knew that, right? Instead, we heard briefly from a paralegal at attorney Todd Blanchard's firm about phone records before a man by the name of Robert Costello took the stand. Now, Costello is a former federal prosecutor, a very close associate of Rudy Giuliani, the twice indicted former mayor of New York City. We'll have more about him later in the show. And also Donald Trump's personal attorney while he was in the White House, Giuliani, that is. I think it is fair to say that Costello's testimony this week backfired on the defense, though how much remains to be determined. But Trump's attorney's main reason to put that man, Robert Costello, on the stand was to directly contradict and impugn the credibility of the prosecution's key witness, Michael Cohen. But I gotta say, turns out Robert Costello might be the only person in the country who can make Michael Cohen seem even-tempered by comparison. Costello began his testimony yesterday acting like what can be best described as a petulant teenager, rolling his eyes, muttering under his breath, at one point saying that something would be to strike something. Of course, that's not his job, that's the judge. And then after sort of crossing the judge, tried to stare him down, at which point the judge was like, "Are you staring me down?" and cleared the courtroom. After clearing the courtroom, the judge called Costello's conduct, quote, contemptuous, in the sort of technical narrow sense of contempt of court, and threatened to remove him from the stand and strike his testimony from the record. That man, Costello, again, the big star witness for the defense, right? The one person they're putting up, returned to the stand today for cross-examination. Now, remember, at the center of Costello's testimony is a 2018 meeting he had with Cohen. That's after Cohen had been issued a search warrant or had a search warrant executed by the FBI. And as Cohen tells it, he's having these back and forth with Costello, who's putting a very kind of high-pressure sales job on him, the implication of which was that they had to kind of keep Cohen in Trump's circle to prevent him from flipping, that, Costello was aligned with Rudy, who was aligned with Trump, so hire me, you'll stay in the circle. Now, Costello says he was just there to offer his legal services. So that's the sort of main battle here, right, over what happened. And today, prosecutor Susan Hoffinger asked Costello, quote, "You discussed with Cohen at that very first meeting how connected you were to Rudy Giuliani, correct?" And Costello responded, quote, "That's not true." Hoffinger then read Costello an email Costello wrote to Cohen 2 days after that meeting, which stated, and we quote here, "I am sure you saw the news that Rudy is joining the Trump legal team. I told you that my relationship with Rudy could be very, very useful to you." Again, Costello's words. The prosecutor also read an email he wrote to a legal partner the same day, not to Cohen, quote, "All the more reason for Cohen to hire me because of my connection to Giuliani, which I mentioned to him in our meeting." So, again, you mentioned Giuliani in the first meeting. No, under oath. Well, let me read 2 emails here in which you're like, I mentioned Giuliani. Okay. In further communications, it's clear that Costello continued to dangle his relationship with Giuliani and, again, by extension, Donald Trump, over Cohen's head. In another email from Costello to Cohen, he wrote, quote, "I spoke with Rudy, very, very positive. You are loved," which I will say is sweet. Adding, quote, "There was never a doubt that they are in our corner. Rudy says this communication channel must be maintained," end quote. "Sleep well tonight. You have friends in high places." Also sweet. P.S. Some very positive comments about you from the White House. Now, you may be thinking that the invocation of Giuliani and Trump repeatedly in written communications by this man doesn't definitively prove Costello's intentions. But in a stunning example of something you really don't want to put in writing, prosecutors then today read another email, again from Costello, to that same legal partner. Quote, I'm quoting again, "Our issue is to get Cohen on the right page without giving him the appearance we are following instructions from Giuliani or the president." And I got to say, when you put it like that, it sure sounds like he was following instructions from Giuliani and the president, doesn't it? So the defense's final act, their one big witness, did not, I think, do a great job exonerating their client or even sort of knocking down the credibility of the man that he was supposed to knock down, Michael Cohen. Now, I got to say, I've followed this trial very closely, not as closely as some of our next guests who've been in the courtroom every day. But, excuse me, I find Michael Cohen, on the core matters of fact that are relevant to the charges, believable. That's in large part due to the extensive documentation provided by all kinds of people, including Robert Costello himself. Not to mention the lengthy paper trail outlining each step of the scheme to repay Cohen for the hush money he paid to Stormy Daniels to cover up the sexual encounter she had with Donald Trump. The attempts to hide those reimbursements in the form of bogus legal payments. The basic contours of all that, like, was Stormy Daniels paid? Did Cohen pay for it? Was he reimbursed? All of that's not really in dispute. A week from now, when closing arguments start, this will all be in the hands of the jury, and they're going to ultimately decide the ex-president's fate. Joining me now are two people inside the courthouse today, MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin and New York Times investigative reporter Suzanne Craig. It's great to have you both here. So I missed the Costello fireworks yesterday. Jen Psaki had her show on Mondays. I don't have one on Mondays. I was following it. I was even texting with Lisa being like, is this as insane as it sounds? So let me just go back a day because I wasn't there. Like the Costello experience in that courtroom.
Well, you're not going to sell me out by reading my response. My response was beyond in all caps. The Costello experience in the courtroom is a really good instructive lesson on how demeanor matters, because you can say all sorts of things about your misdeeds, and so long as you remain polite and contrite and succinct, jurors might believe you, and Michael Cohen is an illustration of that. Yeah. What was so bizarre is that the Robert Costello that we saw over the last couple of days reminded me of the Michael Cohen that we saw at the civil fraud trial.
Which was exactly the fear of everyone around the prosecutor's office.
Correct.
For this trial.
Right. Even to the point that in the same way that Costello said, strike that, or the email speaks for itself, which is also something lawyers say in defense of clients, for example. Michael Cohen at that civil fraud trial would say from the witness stand, asked and answered, right? Very bombastically. So the role reversal was very telling. But I want to read you, Chris, another email that came out with Robert Costello today toward the end, because it is maybe the worst example of how Costello was just seeking to advance Donald Trump's interests and not Michael Cohen's, as he swore. At one point, he writes to his partner, Jeff Citron, who is the person who had a relationship with Cohen, and says,
who introduced the two men.
Correct. And says, tune into CNN and see how they are playing this up. Cohen has to know this, yet he continues to slow play us and the president. Is he totally nuts? What should I say to this blank hole? He is playing with the most powerful man on the planet. And by that, Costello, despite his high opinion of himself, didn't mean him, right? He meant Donald Trump.
Right. Can we just put that, we have that full screen. What should I say to this blank hole? He is playing with the most powerful man on the planet, which is like, right. So the story Cohen is telling is, you're Donald Trump's dude, and you're there to get me. And then he's writing this. What did you think of the cross of Costello today?
Well, I just first want to give some props to the sketch artist who was in court, who caught that moment. We just had it up.
Oh, the stare down.
Yeah, the stare down where the judge is like, whoa, right there.
It's a good.
Yeah.
You're right.
You don't often see that sort of thing from
shout out Jane Rosenberg.
Yeah, shout out, definitely. So what did I think of the cross-examination today when the government got back up? I thought it was incredible. I mean, just how she dissected him in the amount of time and just got right to those emails and just, I think, laid bare that he was an agent of Giuliani and Donald Trump. And no wonder Michael Cohen, you know, the whole premise of having Costello up there was to discredit Cohen, because Costello could come and say, well, he never admitted that he made these payments to me. And Michael Cohen has said, I was really suspicious of this guy. Well,
no wonder.
No wonder. I was going to say, no something, Sherlock.
Yes. Yeah. And we should say there's one piece of testimony Costello gives that where he says Cohen told him, I don't have anything on the president. And in some ways, you know, that's relevant. And I can see if the defense, you want to get that in. Like, look, we talked to this guy and he was like, I got nothing. So you want to plant the seeds that he invented it later, right? Ex post facto. But given the broader contours, there's two stories here about this interaction. Right. And the Cohen story, again, to my mind, from the testimony I saw in that room when I was there and from the emails, like the Cohen story seems to match the other evidence much better than the Costello story does, right? Is that fair?
That's absolutely correct. And there's also another problem with Bob Costello's story. In order to credit Bob Costello's story that Michael Cohen eventually lied, you have to believe that he was telling the truth to Costello at some point in time, which means Michael Cohen tells the truth at some points in time, right? So it's sort of facially ridiculous at some point for Bob Costello to be, Michael Cohen's a liar, because his entire testimony is premised on Michael Cohen telling him the truth for some period of time.
Right. And that's going to come, Michael Cohen, he's a liar, he's a cheat, but this case is going to come down to the jury believing, at least at some point, he can tell the truth. It's not binary. It's not like he always lies or,
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, they have to believe him on certain points, and those are going to be points that the government is going to say that they have corroboration for. Either they have they have conversations to corroborate, or they have documents. Because Michael Cohen is the only person who can speak to the criminal disguise of the documents. He was in all the key meetings. He is the through line. There has to be some believability on those meetings that he has spoken to. Like, we have that incredible Alan Weiselberg, the gross-up document where, everything's sort of cooked and here's how the payments are going to work. And then Alan Weiselberg and Michael Cohen then go to speak to Donald Trump about it. We have not heard from Alan Weiselberg. He's over at Rikers. He has not been called. So we've got Michael Cohen's word on that conversation with Donald Trump where he signed off on it. It's very important. And they just have to believe him on stuff where there's actually evidence. We just put it up on the screen that may have happened.
When you venture out into the world, you may find yourself in a job or a community or a social setting where you will be pressured to endorse ideas you don't believe or to abandon core beliefs. It will be up to you to speak out.
That was Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito speaking earlier this month to graduates of Franciscan University of Steubenville, Ohio, one of the spiritual centers of the anti-abortion movement. The school consistently ranked as one of the most conservative colleges in America. Its website stresses time and time again how central the school has been in the long movement to criminalize abortion in America since Roe v. Wade. Little did we know then that Alito's family had already lived out his advice in their own Northern Virginia community right after the January 6th insurrection, as the Supreme Court was considering an election case, by flying the United States flag upside down on the front lawn of their house. A perversely anti-patriotic symbol adopted by Donald Trump's Stop the Steal supporters to protest Joe Biden's victory. An open nod to the insurrectionists. That's shocking behavior out of a sitting Supreme Court justice. It's all the more shocking because Alito didn't dispute what the inverted flag stood for. In an email statement to the New York Times, he just said it was his wife's idea to fly it to troll the libs in their neighborhood over their own yard signs. Almost sounds like Alito is saying he'd found himself in a social setting being pressured to endorse ideas he didn't believe. But then the news broke about some stock trades Alito made last summer. That August, there was that hokey performative right-wing effort to boycott Bud Light because the company had provided a single trans influencer with one can of beer. It's a little hard to remember just what a crazy cause celeb the Bud Light boycott became in the MAGA fever swamps. But here, let a heavily armed Kid Rock remind you.
Bud Light and Anheuser-Busch. Have a terrific day.
Now, while that boycott was raging last August, according to a search of financial records by legal reporter Chris Geidner, Justice Alito sold a chunk of stock in Bud Light's parent company, Anheuser-Busch, and he bought shares of Coors on the same day. Kid Rock was out shooting up Bud Light cases, and Sam Alito was selling his Anheuser-Busch stock. Now, you could say, well, I don't know, maybe just a coincidence. If it weren't for everything else we know about Sam Alito, the guy who just got an honorary degree, a standing ovation from a conservative Christian college for authoring the Dobbs decision that finally undid Roe v. Wade. A decision that curiously got leaked ahead of time, the full text of it, just like the Hobby Lobby decision, apparently, that he authored, that gave businesses the right to impose their religious beliefs on employees. In fact, the more you examine Alito's public comments, not just in his decisions, but in oral arguments before the court, like the immunity arguments a few weeks ago, in public speeches at conservative schools and organizations like the Federalist Society, the more he looks and sounds like what I think he is, a far-right, MAGA-loving extremist. There's millions of them in America. And nothing more explicitly confirms that than the fact that Alito and his wife apparently flew the symbol of an anti-democratic extremist movement over their own home.